I am John Agyepong. I am the creative facilitator at GRX Immersive Labs. We are a talent development content studio that intersects storytelling with education through immersive technology. A little bit about myself. I was born in Washington, D.C. to immigrant parents from West Africa, Ghana. So they came out, my dad came here in 68. So this was 3 years after they had gained independence. So their mindset was at a whole nother level, right? So they're really, we're gonna go to America and conquer America. So they put that into us. So I didn't really experience the thought processes of defeat or even what some of my brethren, the African Americans, have experienced, and in regards to just the oppression that has happened. I was more, I guess I was more colonization, which is a little bit different than slavery, where, you know, I think the difference is with colonization, you felt you were one of them in a sense, so to speak. And then in slavery, you're not good enough to be, you know, so that was some of the divide that I experienced. And that's what kind of, as a child, I experienced that living in Washington, D.C., being amongst other people in my community. I'm a Junkyard Band fan for one reason. Bugs was so incredible to me because he got signed to Def Jam right after, a little bit after LL Cool J. So he was the only guy from Go-Go to actually, but they didn't know what to do with it. They didn't know how to market Go-Go because it was so authentic and unique. So they couldn't really, you know, take it large scale. So that's always been an amazing fit for me moving into the music space. And just realizing when I would go, my uncle would be like, you know, that's African music. I'm like, I don't care, I'm going to the Go-Go. We're gonna go. But I realized as I got older, the congos and the drums was pretty much, we were taking pop sounds and bringing it into the African space and then, you know, shooting it back out to the people. So it was really, you know, touching our soul in a totally different way. So I really loved that experience. And that was a huge part of how I grew up. I grew up in an African church, so there was a huge sense of community. Everyone is auntie and everyone is cousin. They're like, man, y'all a bunch of cousins. It'd be like 30. I'd be like, that's my cousin and that's my cousin. But it was more, you know, just a family environment. One, you know, village, each one teach one, that sort of environment, which was really strong for me. So then when I traveled after high school, I went to school in Missouri. So that was a predominantly Caucasian experience, which was amazing because it taught me a whole nother realm of culture and people that I didn't have. I remember one time, this was when Bill Clinton had just become president. And I didn't know much about Republican, Democrat. I didn't know any of that stuff. And I just felt like, I was like, hey man, I think Bill Clinton's gonna win. And the backlash I got from my school, and I'm like, y'all taking this really serious. But as a child, I didn't know, you know, my parents, once again, just they're from Africa coming here. So they didn't know the culture. They didn't understand. We're first generation. I call myself an American African. Just being it's a little different than African American, but the same difference. We're the same people. But so in Missouri, had a great experience there. Learned a whole lot. And then had a tragic situation happen in my senior year when both my parents passed away. Yeah, my mom got hit by a car, and then my dad, his heart was just broken. So 6 months later, he passed away. So it was a huge detriment for me. But you know, I believe in the Most High, and God really sustained me as I started going into. I was figuring out, so what should I do? And that's when I moved to California. 2001, didn't really know anybody. I just came out here and started my journey. And then it moved me into the nonprofit space. And in the nonprofit space, it was incredible because I was the first one from this small organization who had sold their radio station, and the corpus was about $250 million, and they put it into a fund, and then the interest was about $6 to $10 million that they would give out toward different work all over the world. And I was the regional director of Africa. So I was traveling throughout Africa, had never been there before. So I'm going back to see my grandma and going throughout East Africa, South Africa, and it was such a great experience. We went into 40 countries and did philanthropy. We did humanitarian projects. We did education, micro business, all kind of different things, which was preparing me for where I am now. But I didn't fully understand that. But one time, you know, I was just going from hotel to hotel, and I'm like, man, I want to go out to the people because it feels like I'm still in America. People are coming to the hotel, and then that's it. So I mustered up the courage to go into the city, and wow, you see, you know, dirt roads, and some of the stuff wasn't as, depending on what country you're in. I go into the club and it's like Miami. I could not believe it. I'm like, what is going on? They have stripper poles and all. I'm like, whoa, this is incredible. So that totally changed. You know, my music bug kicked back in. My music bug kicked back in, and I'm like, I got to figure this out. So I met a guy in South Africa, and he was trying to get shows going. So he's like, hey, man. Mind you, I was coming from a religious context. I have a master's in divinity, so forth and so on, but I was always still to the streets through go-go. So I wasn't really like a staunch religious person. I just had a spiritual sense of self, and I expressed it through that medium. But when I was in the foundation, and I realized when I went through the door of no return in Benin and how Christianity was used, it really, you know, threw me off, and I kind of like pushed it all away. So to bring it back to the story, I met a guy in South Africa who's still my friend to this day. We shook hands. He was like, man, I need to start bringing artists to South Africa. We want to start doing this and whoa. I was like, all right, cool. I didn't know anybody in hip hop, but I was like, hey, I live in Los Angeles. Maybe I could figure something out. So I started to, you know, peruse, and I made the contact, and that's when I started working. It was around 2010. So I was working with Tyga and Mustard and YG, and these were, they all coming up, Kendrick. And I started really growing in the booking space. So I was booking a lot of them in LA at different clubs, and then started taking them to Africa for their first time. So they were coming, I took Omarion, we took Trey Songz, and just all of them. And it was, I could see the difference when they touched the land, what it was doing to them. So I was like, man, this is really interesting. So that went on for some time, working in the music space. Then I had a great relationship with managers because I had done management through projects, and I was like, how hard could it be? Managing artists is like babysitting, man. They don't know how to do anything. You got to do everything for them. So I was like, I'm not cut out for talent management. I'm only getting 20%. We need to flip. I need to figure this out. So that brings me full circle to now, where I was doing management, and I thought about the nonprofit and the stuff we were doing, and thinking about music and the arts. So that's when I met Alton Glass we've been friends for a long time, but he had started GRX. He got into the immersive space, and I was like, man, what's that about? And he said, well, you should probably help me out, because we're working with Verizon, and we're working on this music app, and you can come in and train and build curriculum for children in Black and brown communities. I was like, I never made a curriculum before, but that sounds cool. And that's where we started. That was about a year ago, and this is where we are today. And really excited about bridging that gap with the philanthropic, with the faith-based, but not being overly, you know, religious, but just having a spiritual sense of self, and connecting that. And I think it's really important for our people. So I'm really excited. As far as my younger self, you know, when my parents passed, that was so tragic for me.
Yeah.
And what I would tell myself is, do not lose a sense of who you are, regardless of what you perceive to be a negative or a positive situation, because you can lose yourself in the middle of that and give your power away. I kept giving my power away because I wanted family. So I would bring in people who weren't good for me, but hey, I'll handle you mistreating me because at least you're here with me. You know, so that was what I went through for quite some time. And I just invited a lot of that energy into my space. So I would tell my younger self to keep your strong sense of community, and to know that trouble don't last always. You know, things are going to shift, things are going to change, and it's all about your perspective and how you look at it. Because what looks negative to one can be positive to another. It's just your outlook. What I'm passionate about is reaching the younger generation and give them their autonomy, learning that it's interdependence that we need, and that we need to build communally, a communal leadership, servant leadership, and be innovative. Okay, the past happened, it was really bad, but my life will always matter because I'm here. If you're here, if you're alive, you belong here. You know what I mean? We don't have to get scientific, but there was a ton of sperms, and you know, the whole thing that happens. And you made it through 9 months, you made it through gook and water and all kind of things, and you are here. Your heart is beating right now off of the energy. I matter for sure, and there's a billion of us, so I know I matter. So I don't need to really have that conversation anymore. So I feel like it's antiquated thought processes, like trying to, you know, fit in with, if I'm physically here, I belong here. And no one has the right to tell me or to push me any one way or the other because you didn't bring me here. It's really simple. So that's kind of how I feel about that. And I'll just drop the mic there.